Senator Dick Durbin standing by. There is no more prominent voice in Congress than Dick Durbin. And happy to have him back on the show after far too long. Good morning, Senator.
How you doing, Steve?
Nice to talk to you again. Jane is here as well.
Good morning.
Morning, Jane.
We have to jump in, obviously, on this terrible story, ongoing terrible story. It's 30 days now in the Israel-Hamas war. You prominently called for a ceasefire. You have any confidence that it could head that way?
Well, it takes both sides to agree if there's going to be such a thing. But, I just looked at it from the simple point of view. The strategy which we've seen unfolding from the Israelis really puts so many innocent people at risk.
Right.
The numbers are overwhelming. I have an insight into this a little better than some. We have a doctor in Chicago, Dr. Salul, has an organization called Med Global. What they do is send doctors and healthcare professionals to war zones. And he put me in touch with the head of the pediatric ward of one of the major hospitals in Gaza. The conditions there are just outrageous in terms of how the children are being treated. Amputations without anesthesia. I could go on, but I don't want to.
It's hard to talk about it.
It is hard to talk about. Now, let me start at the beginning. What Hamas did on October 7th was an atrocity to the Israel and the Jewish people there. There's no excuse for it, and I'm not making any, and the world would be better off if Hamas as a terrorist organization is gone from the face of the earth, period. Having said that, we have to measure how we respond and whether it's effective and humane, and whether it meets the basic standards of civilization.
So if we can agree that Hamas's bargaining chip are hostages, which is horrific, obviously, in its own right, how do we get them to give up, for lack of a better way of putting it, even if it's taking the two main leaders out and letting them go to some other country and hide?
Well, I'm not sure what the outcome will be. I could just tell you that I know what we're living with now. The idea of killing leaders of Hamas by Israel is certainly one I understand and support. But when you look at the so-called collateral damage and you put the proportionality into it, there are 10,000 people, Palestinians, who have been killed since this conflict began a month ago, and more to follow. It is a desperate situation. I received a copy of a text from this Dr. Sophia at this pediatric ward at his hospital, and he explained that they were running out of fuel, and that meant no electricity. And that, he said, he listed the name of a young girl who said died this morning because we had no electricity. These are the basics and fundamentals, and the people who are dying are certainly not the perpetrators of that atrocity in Israel. You reach a point and you say to yourself, this would be an excellent topic for an ethics class at a college or some other place. But the reality of it, it's a day-to-day tragedy, which is taking the lives of a lot of innocent people.
Well, you hit on something there that I think is really important for people to remember. I mean, so many people seem to me, in my view, to feel like this is one big reality show. I'm not talking about Israel-Hamas, but everything in politics, everything in the world. This is real, folks. This is happening. On the other side of the world, we're getting up on a beautiful day in Chicago, and on the other side of the world, this hell is ongoing, as it is in Ukraine.
Certainly is, and most of us would like to lead our lives not thinking about these painful and uncomfortable topics. But part of my job is to try to make a decision how to vote, representing the people of our state in a way that is consistent with their values. I think most people would agree with me that the innocent people who are dying, we should do everything we can to protect them, and that's my starting point.
Senator Durbin, Jane's here. We were talking about the Supreme Court.
Yeah, so as a member of the Senate Judiciary Committee, you've been pushing for the creation of a formal code of conduct for the Supreme Court, a code of ethics. Where are you at with that? Where are we at? Any updates?
Well, there is an update, and I think it's an important one. The fact of the matter is the 9 members of the Supreme Court of the United States of America are treated differently than any other person in our federal government when it comes to code of ethics, in terms of disclosure and in terms of establishing standards for what is acceptable and what is not. We've seen plenty of examples involving the justices, one in particular, taking lavish gifts, free rides on jet planes and yachts.
Vacations.
It just goes on and on. The list goes on and on. most of which was never disclosed. So we passed a Code of Ethics bill. Senator Whitehouse is the sponsor of it, passed out of the Senate Judiciary Committee, which I chair. It's pending on the floor. And we're trying to gather information about these billionaires, these fawning billionaires who have given these gifts to Supreme Court justices. I'll have to tell you, they didn't cooperate very much at all. And so we're considering this week, and it's controversial out here, the issuance of subpoenas for this information. I think the American people have a right to know.
100%. And we're jumping around here in the interest of time. The good Dr. Most, who was on just before the top of the hour, brought something up off the air, which is an important topic. There were 10 drugs that were listed for Medicare cost cutting to make them more affordable. Any news on when the next batch would come, how many drugs would be involved, and that sort of thing?
Well, no, there is no announcement that I know of. And Steve, let me just tell you, most Americans will recognize the names of all 10 drugs. Why? Because you can't turn on the television or stream without receiving another ad for another drug that is wildly popular and wildly expensive. We are trying to make sure that people have access to these drugs, but make sure the cost of them is within reach. It is the driving force. A person with Blue Cross Blue Shield told me that if you're concerned about your health care hospitalization premiums, the most important driver now are the cost of these prescription drugs. So bringing down the cost of insulin, which we've done with the president, to $35 a month, is a good step in the right direction, and we should do more.
Before we run out of time, the migrant crisis, you well know, is a huge story here. We cannot have folks living in police stations. We're 2,000 cops down. Makes it harder for people to access the police stations. Obviously makes it harder to do the job. And there is a fair and equitable way that these folks need to be housed and taken care of until we can figure out what to do next. It's not just a here's the solution, send them home. It's a ridiculous thing when people say that. So there's people in the suburbs talking about using motels and hotels and things. What can the Senate do? And I separate the Senate from the House because they're different, probably as different as they've ever been. But what can the Senate do, and what have you been asked to do, if you can share it?
Well, I can tell you that for 30 years we have failed to come up with meaningful reform of our immigration laws, and that is a major driver in the problems that we're now experiencing at our border. After World War II, we decided that the United States would lead the world when it came to accepting refugees. What we have now is an overwhelming situation around the world, record numbers of refugees, and many of them believe if they just step their foot across the line into the United States that they're safe and can remain regardless. We've got to take a look at our laws and be honest about them. I want to make sure that we are a refuge for people who are facing threats, serious threats on their life and otherwise. But the current system has been overwhelmed by the refugee crisis across America. We are going to consider this issue, and I hope effectively in the next few weeks here on Capitol Hill as part of the closing of the budget debate. But I'm going to be part of that, and I've spoken to the Republican senators about it. I hope we can find that path to something that is consistent with our values. And I hope you won't let anybody go home for turkey until they come up with an answer. Well, basically, remember, it's been 30 years, so is there going to be the turkey's going to be pretty cold if we don't get on the ball. You like cranberry sauce, Senator? Yes, I do. I like the ones that come out of the can that still have the imprint of the can on them. Yeah, you like the noise, that splurt noise it makes when it comes out? That's America. That's Thanksgiving. And where do you fall on Thanksgiving Day? Are you part of the cooking team or the cleanup team? I'm the cleanup team. Nice. Okay. Certainly eat my fair share, but I do the cleaning. Now, you've known me long enough for me to share this pro tip with you, and I'll let you go. You walk into the kitchen when you get there. You hug Mom. You hug whoever. And then you drop a plate and break something. That way you're kicked out of the kitchen and sent to watch football. What do you think? I think you've got a winning formula there. No, thank you, Senator. Thank you. I appreciate your time. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Senator.
Thanks, Jane. Thanks, Steve.
There you go, Senator Dick Durbin, on all the problems in the world and cranberry sauce.